Chandler Jones, says that he was basically illegally injected with something foreign. He doesn't know what it is. He was thrown into a mental health facility against his will. He had no issues of mental defect, and he still has questions. Put up the picture full mask. This is an extreme story and very troubling. NFL star Chandler Jones took to social media claiming he was taken to a mental hospital against his will by the Las Vegas Fire Department, where he was forced medication and injections with unknown substances. The first page, assumed to be written on his first day out of the facility, reads, and I quote, "First day out. If my fans and friends were wondering, I was taken in by the Las Vegas Fire Department last week against my will. I was injected with I don't know what. They said that it was a court hold and the Las Vegas police put me on it. I haven't done anything wrong. The police said people were concerned about me because of my post online. I answered my front door and a group of 5 to 7 were there to put me in an ambulance where I was later injected. And I asked them not to. I have no cell phone. I had no cell phone, no communication. I was taken to the Southern Hills Hospital and then transferred to Seven Hills, where they tried to force me to take meds and injections." The next page, assumed to be written while he was still in the facility, reads, "I called the Raiders GM 6 to 7 times asking for help, and I wondered if he had put me in here, but he never answered. I even left him voicemails. I was just trying to figure out why I'm not allowed in the building still, and why do I have to continue to watch my brother suffer every Sunday?" But no answer. This place, Healthy Heroes, is not a place for high-profile athletes. My first night, I slept on the floor and was not offered a bed. My brothers had to bring me decent meals to eat and clothes. Every game that I miss is $1 million. I'm still confused on what I did wrong. I'm stuck here. I'm very sane. Now put this picture up again because I want to make this contextualization, dear brother, because you said something that I think you may have a different view of today when you said this is not a place for high-profile athletes. Sir, it's not a place for anybody if you're not able to get a proper bed to sleep on or meal to eat. Nobody deserves that, high-profile or not. Just want to make that reference. He continues in a short page saying that that he works out in his room every day, even down the halls of the facility. He also claims that whoever put him in here has bad intentions. He then states that he is too strong to be mentally broken, referencing friends that know him, saying they know. Finally, he shares an alleged copy of the patient rights, highlighting where the facility violated them. His mental faculties are quite advanced, if you're saying he's in some kind of mental decline, because he's able to be very analytical and very, critical in his thinking. And he can also do contrast narratives quite well. Put it up full mass. This is interesting. 3 notable sections from the alleged hospital document read, "You have the right to refuse treatment and medication." But according to him, they forced it. "You have the right to be treated in the least restrictive environment. And you have the right to be treated, you have the right to the least restrictive environment, and you have the right to be treated in the least restrictive environment." So let me give you a backstory on Jones' volatile relationship with the Raiders, the owners and coaches. Jones was placed on the non-football illness list last week, ruling him out of playing indefinitely, okay? Raiders head coach Josh McDaniel said Jones' situation was a personal situation and a private matter. When he was ruled out, Jones has been inactive for the 2 weeks of the season and has been away from the Raiders since their final training camp practice, August 31st. Just a week prior to his alleged forced hospital stay, Jones took to X, formerly known as Twitter, accusing the Raiders owner, Mark Davis, of protecting the identity of a man he claims molested his goddaughter. Now keep that picture up. I want you to keep it up. Just a week prior to his alleged forced hospital stay in a mental health facility where he was injected by medication, according to him, against his will. 2 weeks prior to any of that happening, Mr. Jones took to social media accusing the Raiders owner, Mark Davis, of protecting the identity of a man he claims molested his goddaughter.
Wow, that's deep. That's, child abuse. Here we go.
Before he was allegedly put into a mental hospital against his will, Jones sent what's being called a bizarre X post last week about Raiders owner Mark Davis. According to the Bleacher Report, quote, "I wish Mark Davis told people I really can't play." Jones allegedly wrote in the now deleted post. Jones continued his claims, writing, "Mark Davis didn't know I didn't have any kids, and I was fostering a very important man's kid. I won't say his name, but once I found out that was done to this little girl, I wasn't allowed back in the building," he says. The defensive end allegedly let loose in a string of allegations on Instagram, saying he was no longer allowed into the franchise headquarters.
Wow, so this is like a double whammy because a child was abused by sounds like a friend of the owner of the Raiders, and allegedly abused by a friend of the owner of that. I don't know, maybe not. I don't know. I can't say that. But what I can say is that um, a player stood up for a child. A man stood up for a child, and he is being apparently punished for it. We'll need to dig in deeper into this story. What are your thoughts, Cyber?
I honestly, I wasn't really listening. I was
Doing stuff. Right. No problem. No problem.
I was in the chat trying to see Mr. Brown. Where is you at, Mr. Brown? We have your opponent here ready to go. She got her gloves up. He's been training with Mike Tyson and them. Mr. Brown, where you at?
We'll give him some time. We'll keep playing this until he gets here. I got a couple more vids just in case.
He no longer wanted to be part of the team and that he had issues with McDaniel and Ziegler. You know, he may have issues with the man he said he has issues. You know, that's possible. He may not have a mental health disorder. He may be in his complete right mind, which is what created the disorder, allegedly. I believe that there's more to this story. I believe that Mr. Jones has more to say. And I will say this for anyone who can tag the brother on social media, if you know him directly. If he has more to say, Indisputable is willing to hear it, okay? And I want to take this moment seriously. Now, naturally, we will reach out to whoever is accused of such an extreme act.
So let me pause it right there. You know what's interesting is that as pro-black male as the manosphere appears or tries to make themselves appear to be, do you know how minimal travesties against black men that don't involve black women they cover?
They don't care about black men.
No.
They're there to what's the word for it? I wouldn't say pander to them, but feed them false hope in attempts to get their money. They
Yeah.
don't care if it's $1 for 1,000 people. Oh, I just seen the person I've been
Yeah.
looking for 3 minutes. But like I
I,
said, they don't care if
I,
it's a dollar.
yeah. This is ladies and gentlemen, this is what you call exposure of the Black manosphere. Here I am, here we are, all right, on a on a BWE channel, supporting a Black man who was unjustly, let's just say, constrained.
He was
You guys
accosted.
should have been, they should have been all over this. And he did this to save a child, of all things. At least apparently that's how it is now. This right here, this is perfect evidence of the Black manosphere just being a huge fraud. I should have been like, when I woke up in the morning and I'm on Pacific time, I should have been like the 100th person who got a hold of this. It's crickets out there. Every time a Black man is clearly unjustly treated, you don't hear crickets in the Black manosphere because they can care less unless it involves a Black woman. And then most of the time, they're lying about that. These dudes are fraud. Y'all are frauds. Anyway, let me stop. Before I get started, let me drop the link for the two contestants. And then we'll remove the link after they get up, just so we don't have people stepping in when they're not supposed to. All right, link is dropped. Fiber, it is on you now.
All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We have the great debate number 3. So let's get ready to rumble. I'm gonna wait for our contestants to come up so I can introduce them.
Yes. Let's wait for them to get up and then you can introduce them then. Oh, let me get some shout outs out of the way. Indiana Mom's in the house. Camo is in the house. Kitten Casket. Miss RV is in the house. Of course, Cyber's on stage. She's the dang host. Andre Brown is in the house. Benji Matsu is in the house. We have one of our famous debaters here. Angelina is in the house. Amiri is in the house. Alexander Brannon is in the house. Let me move it up more. Okay. Who else is up in here? Tevin is in the house. And we got the people up in the clouds who are up in the house. Let me put might as well plop in a little bit of Angelina is on stage. Let me move that there. Start that there. A little bit. All right. Welcome, Angelina. I'm going to hand it over to Cyber. Here we go.
Waiting for Mr. Brown. Well, while he come up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today's debate will be a discovery into the history of domestic violence, its cause and effects on society, and whether or not there is a direct connection between domestic violence and child abuse. For today's contestants, we have Angelina, the elegant LW Academy coming in. And we also have the amazing Mr. Get That Work, Amiri Brown.
Okay, so he's in the house. But let's see. Okay, let me put another video on just until he gets on stage. We might as well put this one on. This is perfect. Here we go.
And the pot calls the kettle black, calls the kettle burnt, calls her mad. Kettle reminds the pot that we both been burned on the same stove, that the parts of our bodies that are layered in soot were scorched by the same hands. Kettle tells pot that she still boils water, holds the hot breath of a white man's tongue, endures the slow simmer of a white woman's allyship, and still we make something beautiful. Pot calls the kettle wicked, and kettle says no, but says she's so magical she burned the hand of the last man who tried to pour himself a piece of her. Says she's so black she is everything, so black she is the beginning. She is the first thing someone finds home in when they wake up in the morning. Says ain't that what it means to be black? To have the world go up in flames around you and still be sanctuary for someone, saving men who lost themselves the night before, saving men who curse our names but forget his mama is made of steel too. And now the pot has no words, but calls the kettle bitter, but loves the glass pan, the fine china, loves all the exotic shit white men put behind glass casings, loves how fragile things not made of steel can be. But this isn't about the pot or the pan. This is about the kettle, the black woman, how she pours herself across the earth, but no one bats an eye when the water disappears. We give ourselves to men who never love us, but they say we are difficult, too hard to break. How we, the kettle, praise this pot, this man for all the water he holds. How we are the only ones who do not call him monster when the water boils over, because we know this heat, this white flame, hot enough to make any of us explode. We are the first ones to make noise when the world goes up in flames, but they say the earth was saved by the man who heard her scream. Pot calls the kettle black, and kettle says yes, but says you best remember you black too. The next time they bring a fire to your neck, they burn black bodies on the stake and the stove. Pot calls the kettle black, and kettle says bitch I might be, says nuck if you buck, then says wipe me down. Kettle says yes my nigga, I be black, I be mad, and I boiled the last man down to his bones when he tried to test me. Pot calls the kettle black, and kettle says hell yes, but don't say my name as if you ain't ever been burnt too.
All right, all right. Now, if you guys enjoy the way I moderate these debates, we know it's basically a conversation, but it sounds better to name it a debate. Just show me some love. My Cash App is there. Show me a little love. Okay, contestants, unmute yourselves.
Hello.
Hello. So we have Angelina here, the LW Academy, and we got Mr. Get That Work, Amiri Brown. How you guys doing?
Hey, how y'all
today?
doing?
All right.
I'm doing okay.
So today's debate is a discovery into the history of domestic violence, its cause and effects on society, and whether there's a direct connection between child abuse and domestic violence. Rules of the debate is you will have a 2-minute opening statement followed by 5 series of questions. You will also have a chance to ask your contestant opponent a question as well. And the chat will also ask you questions. Do we all agree to the rules of the debate?
Yep, that's fine.
But yeah,
All right, chat. Without further ado, let's get ready to rumble. All right. In the year 1920, wife beating was made illegal in the United States. 9 years later, in 1929, the Great Depression started, which lasted 10 years. During this 10-year event, DV rates increased. Was this increase solely based on economic deficiencies or the lack of male conflict resolution skills? Go first, Angelina.
Lack of male conflict resolution skills, I would say.
Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. I skipped the first part. We need an opening statement. Okay, I'm sorry, you guys.
All right. Okay.
Okay, what
Okay,
number?
back it up.
Yeah, what number contestants am I thinking from 1 to 10?
8.
6.
Angelina got it. Go first with your opening statement.
My opening statement. Okay, so my opening statement is my angle in which I'm coming from is that this domestic violence is, whilst women are capable of violence, of course, and engaging in domestic violence and even being the perpetrator of domestic violence, I do think it is still a gendered what's the word? It's a gendered issue, leaning more with men than women, even to this day, even with knowing everything that we know now. That's my view.
Okay, Amiri Brown, Mr. Get That Work, your opening statement.
Well, look, when we're talking about violence, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, I won't deny that there is a disparity in the frequency and instances of men versus women. The problem that I have when I hear these conversations a lot of times is that we don't add context to what's actually causing the behavior. You just mentioned the 1920s, the Great Depression, and we have to pay attention to the external stressors that's also placed on men. See, feminists in their zeal to fight for the equality and protection of women, they made this more about gender when it has everything to do with social stratification, the way society is structured, and how patriarchy in and of itself places immense pressure on both men and women, and how that background music is too loud. I can't even hear myself think. Can y'all turn it down a little bit?
Hey, Torch, turn that down, please.
There we go. That's better. So, like I was saying, how the external stressors, it causes, it's at the center of a lot of this, violent behavior. This isn't an excuse, but this is to add context to the behavior, so we can create avenues of conflict resolution to mitigate the behavior. So that's my opening statement on it.
All right, first question. I'm going to repeat it. In the year 1920, wife beating was made illegal in the United States. 9 years later, in 1929, the Great Depression started, which lasted 10 years. During this 10-year event, DV rates increased. Was this increase solely based on economic deficiencies or the lack of male conflict resolution skills? Go first, Amiri.
I think it's a confluence of factors. Look, when you're looking at domestic violence, I just mentioned this: the external stressors that places pressures on people in a given environment. It's going to create these behaviors. You know what I mean? It's no coincidence that you see an uptick in domestic violence, as it relates to it taking place during the Great Depression. Of course, this is more stress on the man and on the woman in the relationship. It's like 50 Cent said, everybody mad when they paper don't stack right. You know what I'm saying? So it is this thing where a lot of times men would come home and take out their frustrations on their wife and on their children. Not to excuse it, but again, we have to add context and begin to really understand what patriarchy is when we're having this conversation. Patriarchy has very little to do with gender, and it has everything to do with class, because it's about social stratification. So I'll leave it right there.
Okay, Angelina, do you want me to repeat the question or you got it?
I think I have it. Okay, so we can't, when we're talking about domestic violence, we are actually talking about and we're talking about patriarchy. We're talking about it in the context of gender. You can't shift that when it comes to abuse. That's what we're talking about it in the context of, right? So I want to make that clear. We can't shift it and make it about other things, because when we're having a conversation about abuse, that is what we're talking about. Man, woman, gender. It's a gender issue.
Well, right now I need you guys to answer the question because we're going to start with the history as first.
Okay. Sorry. I was responding to what he was saying.
No,
okay.
Not yet. You'll get a chance to do that. Not yet.
Okay, thank you.
Let me repeat the rules again.
Repeat the question. Repeat the question.
Repeat the rules first.
Okay, go ahead.
You're going to get a question, right? You're going to respond.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get 2 minutes to respond to the question. Once you guys both respond to the questions, you're going to have a chance to ask each other something about what they said, and then you guys can go, and then you got 2 minutes, 2-minute limit. Okay,
got it.
Move on to the next question. Okay,
got it. Okay, all right, so repeat the question again so I can answer. Sorry.
This stream is about the history. We're going to first base it on the history. In year 1920, wife beating was made illegal in United States. 9 years later, in 1929, the Great Depression started, which lasted 10 years. During this 10-year event, DV rates increased. Was this increase solely based on economic deficiencies or the lack of male conflict resolution skills?
Okay, I want to correct my very first answer. I think it's a combination of both. Because poverty does have a huge impact on the way that people operate within their relationships, especially men. So I think it's a combination of both.
Can you explain why?
Because when we're talking about abuse and men and the economical situation, when men are in a situation where their finances aren't stacking up right, they react in not a very healthy way, right? Typically. So I think that would have been exasperated during that time, which would have caused these issues, because finances and poverty is one of the major factors when it comes to domestic violence and abuse. So in that, I think it would be both.
Amiri, do you have a counter for what she just said?
Well, not a counter, but to explain a little bit more. That's just exactly what I just said. It's about social stratification. It's precisely why you see these behaviors play out in lower tier males on the male hierarchy. It's because these men are under the pressure of that male hierarchy. It's because this is about class and the way class is formulated. And the lower you get on the socioeconomic ladder, the more prevalent you're going to see these types of behaviors, because it's about the ecology, the ecological pressure that's causing the behavior. So it's a confluence of things. The problem that happens is when we have these conversations, feminists and others want to make this about the male brain and men versus women, when this has everything to do with class.
Okay. Can I respond?
Sure. 2 minutes.
Okay. In that, what you just said, it's not everything to do with class. Finances is a factor. There are so many other factors that do relate to gender. No, it's not. It's a factor. It's one factor. Like I said, there are so many other factors that is connected to gender. So we cannot just say it's an economical thing, it's a class thing. That's not what we're talking about when we talk about abuse, when we talk about patriarchy. The reason why the gendered approach was introduced in the first place was because there are way more factors than just class involved in that. Because it's about gender.
And Mary, you want a chance to counter that And then we're gonna move on to question number 2.
Well, yeah. Again, I just mentioned this, and see, this is the thing. Like, you can't want to deconstruct patriarchy, but then not want to deconstruct the myths of what we believe about male behavior and female behavior that go along with patriarchy, that facilitate patriarchy. See, the same thinking that says, well, a man is superior to a woman, is the same thinking that says that, well, the man is always the cause of violence or abuse in a relationship. No, we have to look at these things objectively and from an objective viewpoint. You see, so I mean, let's have the discussion, because it's a great discussion to be had. But you can't want to deconstruct patriarchy, but then not deconstruct the gender myths that make patriarchy exist. You have to deconstruct all of it.
Can I respond to that?
Okay. Yes, you can, but I want to move on to the next question, because then I'm gonna write down what he just said, because that would be my bonus questions.
Okay, so what I want to say to that is, there's no discussion about deconstructing patriarchy, which is why I have an issue with people trying to even the scores and remove the gendered approach when it comes to domestic violence, because you cannot remove the gendered approach without deconstructing patriarchy, or else more women are going to die out here in these streets, right? So, because it was put in place to protect them in a system of patriarchy. So if you're here, you can't be here saying, oh, we need to, equalize things and we need to get rid of the gendered approach, while still operating in a system of patriarchy. So I agree with you. Both of them need to be deconstructed. And my issue is that one is being deconstructed without the main one being deconstructed. We talk about deconstruction, but it's not actually happening here out in society. And that is the problem. So when that's deconstructed, yeah, we can do equality and remove the gender approach. But until that day, we can't have that conversation. I mean, we can. We're having it now, but...
Okay. Second question. In 1976, the Domestic Violence Act was introduced into law, following the 1981 Domestic Violence Awareness Day of Unity by a national coalition against domestic violence. The U.S. Department of Justice estimates 95% of reported assaults are committed by men against women. So my question to you both, with all the past efforts to protect women, would you conclude that men have a difficult time living and interacting with women? Is there a psychological hindrance in men that prevents them from living peaceful with women, or is something else? Who wants to go first?
She can go first.
Well, so can you repeat the question again? Sorry.
Okay.
Just the question. You don't have to give me the history. Just the question.
With all the past efforts to protect women, would you conclude that men have a difficult time living and interacting with women? Is there a psychological hindrance in men that prevents them from living peacefully with women, or it could be something else?
Okay, I think it's a range of things. The problem, here's the thing. Being men means that you're going to be negatively influenced in a lot of ways within the society, right? And I think that creates an issue where they become more abusive in their intimate relationships, right? Because we have like gender roles, which are widely understood by everybody in society what they are, right? And that norm being that men are in control, men are the leaders, men are this and men are that, gives them more license to behave in more controlling ways, which is, part and parcel of abuse, right? So things like that really create a situation where they are gonna be more active in abuse, if that makes any sense.
Do you yield the floor to Amiri now?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's on you.
Well, no, I think I've just talked about it. Some of this is due to again the ecological pressure that men are under. Some of this is due to the fact that many men are intimidated by women because they fundamentally look at women as sexual objects, as merely their mating options, and so that can have a certain level of intimidation and play out in their psychology and their behavior. And then I do think that some of this is due to the fact that you have some men who are merely defective, who are antisocial, who aren't well socially adjusted for whatever reason. It could be due to their upbringing. It could just be a flaw in their personality. It could be the result of a chemical imbalance. But the principal thing here that I think no one can ignore is that contemporary men in modern times are having a rough go. And unfortunately, the way a lot of this psychology works in hierarchy is people make themselves feel better about their situations when they have someone they can punch down on, or that they can look down on. And you see that behavior playing out with men.
Okay, I got a bonus question after listening to you guys talk. My first bonus question is, what are the myths in regards to patriarchy in the behaviors of both male and female? What are the myths?
One of the myths is this idea that men are inherently more aggressive than women. There's nothing in any data that supports that outside of laboratory experiments. However, when you get to the real world, what they find is that females are just as likely to be aggressive as males. That's not me making it up. That's what the data says.
Angelina, would you like to say something towards that? Or?
Okay, so that's a complicated thing to respond to, because just as likely to be aggressive and which one is more aggressive are two different things. Likely to be aggressive, like a woman is capable of being aggressive. Yes, it's a no-brainer. But which one is going to be more aggressive? I would say it would be men in alignment with the lab research. We're not talking about whether women can be aggressive. We're talking about human beings. Anyone can be aggressive, but which one is going to be more aggressive? The stats research shows that okay.
Well, no, go ahead. I'm letting you finish.
Yeah, the stats research shows that even when it comes to what we were talking about last time in regards to, let's not go into that. We'll go into child abuse later. But it basically shows that men are more aggressive than women, even in that area. So we're not talking about capability of being aggressive. Any human is capable of being aggressive. We're talking about which one is more going to be more aggressive.
Well, the question was the myth of patriarchy. He said that the normal thing that people are saying about men is that they inherently are violent. Amiri stands that is a myth. So what are some myths on the feminine side? What are the myths?
One of the myths on the feminine side is that it dates back to the history of domestic violence. One of the beliefs was that women were not capable of being violent, of being aggressive, without there being some sort of without them being reactive or defending themselves. It was more about defending themselves. It's like, they'll be aggressive when they're defending themselves, but other than that, they're not capable of it. And I mean, that's a myth from the female point of view.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to read. This is out of the behavioral Frontiers Behavioral Neuroscience, and it says in laboratory studies, women are less aggressive than men, but provocation attenuates this difference. In the real world, women are just as likely to aggress their romantic partner as men are, but men cause more serious physical and psychological harm. So what that's saying is that the difference is in provocation. So what that means is in a male-dominated society, a man is going to be tried more than a woman. Not from the woman. I'm talking about from other men. You know what I mean? You're gonna be more readily tried than a woman is. Now, this isn't me making it up. I didn't put this in the journal. They put it there. I'm just reading it. And so, really, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish. Go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
And so this is the thing. For 40 or 50 years, what we've heard from feminists is that they can do everything a man can do, but let's get this straight, except be violent and be aggressive. They can't do that. Like it doesn't work that way. If you're going to deconstruct the patriarchy, well, then you have to deconstruct the myths about patriarchy. And pound for pound, place for place, women are just as likely to be aggressive as men. The only difference is provocation, number one, and number two is that when men are aggressive and when men are violent, they do much more harm than women. So that's the difference. Because again, as I stated in our last conversation, this has everything to do about human behavior, what makes us human. I'm not big on the idea of any one gender holding a monopoly over what's bad and the other gender holding a monopoly over everything that's good. A lot of times the truth on these things is somewhere in the middle.
Okay, Angelina, you want to counter something or ask him a question?
Yes, definitely. Like I'm always saying, the devil is in the details, right? So whilst you're saying that women are, and I'm not arguing the point of being capable, I keep stressing that. I'm not arguing the point of women being capable. Okay. Anyone's capable. That's not my discussion, right? According to UK police reports, it reveals that whilst women are reported as being violent and initiating violence and, it is the men who show a pattern of behavior. So a woman will strike out one time, get arrested, get in trouble, blah, 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 and never be heard of again. It's the men that create the pattern of behavior. So that's another difference. You're saying the only difference is provocation, and I can't remember the other thing that you said, but there's also the difference of the pattern. And what makes abuse? A pattern of behavior. That's what makes abuse. So when we're talking about that, like I said, the devil is in the details. We cannot just look at stats and say, oh yeah, they're just as likely, end of story. You have to look a little bit deeper into it.
Okay. For the second, Amiri, you have anything else? But I have a second bonus question.
No, I'll yield on that part.
Okay, so I heard you say, Mr. Brown, that men are antisocial. So my question would be, is the antisocial personality, is that mainly a tribute to men, or women can be affected by that as well in a modern society?
No, I think you can have women who are antisocial who just aren't, so well adjusted to the society. What are the social mores and norms? But I think it disproportionately displays itself with men, because again, when we're talking about patriarchy places immense pressure on men. You know what I mean? See, feminists portray patriarchy as if it's a system that just benefits men en masse, and that's simply not the case. And so what you're looking at a lot of times is you're looking at men who just have a hard time of achieving any level of success, any level of accomplishment, any level of achievement, when what the social norm is and the social moray is that it's a man's world. If anybody should be able to make it, it should be you as a man. Now, we can have a discussion on how true that is, but that is the myth of patriarchy. That's another one of the myths of patriarchy. But patriarchy does not benefit a majority of men.
Angelina, would you like to have something to say on that?
I want you to. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
I heard Amiri say something, so I wrote down a little bonus question. I'm gonna do that throughout the debate. He stated something about anti-socialism. So antisocial personality, is that mainly a tribute to modern men, or women are affected in today's society as well?
I mean, women can be affected, but it's men are more affected. when we're talking antisocial personality, we're talking about the sociopath. Men are more affected. Same with being a psychopath. And I think they're evening up with the MPD. I'm not sure about the stats on that. But we need to consider within that mental health is another factor that contributes, along with finances and economic situation, that is another factor that contributes to abuse in the household. So again, we got men up ahead with all these mental illness and mental issues. It's another tie-in when it comes to the gender approach and it being a gendered situation.
Amiri, would you like a chance to say something towards that, or we can move on to question 3?
Well, again, when we're talking about patriarchy, look, I'll just put it like this: many of the people that talk about patriarchy, from just my observation, don't really have an idea what patriarchy is. Number one, if you're looking at it through any feminist theoretical frame, there isn't even a concrete definition of what patriarchy is coming from feminist philosophy. That's number one. Number two, when you're talking about patriarchy is about social stratification, because it's a mating strategy, and it's how males orient themselves on the hierarchy to make themselves more attractive to the female species. And so it's a mating strategy. And with that being the case, the males at the top place immense amounts of pressure on the males at the bottom. And this is why a lot of the behaviors that we're talking about this evening are displayed by the males on the bottom. This is what it is. That's that's part and parcel of what patriarchy is. See, in patriarchy, the females are nothing but a resource that males compete over. That's Bateman's principle. That's an anthropological fact that females, and I'm not saying females to dehumanize women, but if we're talking about gender, we have to talk about it in the frame of male and female. But females are a resource that males compete over. And so in terms of the male hierarchy, the females are irrelevant because they are the biological prize that facilitates the male's biological imperative. That's anthropology.
Okay, Angelina, anything you want to say towards that? Or are we going to move on to question 3? Okay, moving on to question 3. CDC.
Oh, sorry, I didn't unmute my mic.
Okay.
But carry on, go ahead.
Question number 3.
Go ahead.
Hey, you guys in the chat, don't forget to bless your girl in the Cash App. Okay, CDC states that children witness more than half of these assaults that have. Wait, hold on. CDC states that children witness more than half of these assaults, which we're talking about domestic violence, and have a 45% to 60% chance of experiencing child abuse if their parent is being assaulted. Which of the following, being male father or mother female, would most likely carry out said abuse against children?
Are we talking about in a two-parent? Are we talking about in a two-parent household?
It could be either or.
It's different depending on who we're talking about.
It will give us both. Give us both angles then.
Okay. All right. So if we're talking about in a two-parent household, it's going to be probably the father that just. Oh, wait a minute. Are we talking about just abuse in general, not as a punishment, not as a way of managing? We're just talking about abuse.
The question again. Okay, the CDC states that children witness more than half of these assaults and have a 45% to 60% chance of experiencing child abuse if their parent is being assaulted. Which of the following, being father male or mother female, would most likely carry out said abuse against children?
Oh, okay. So it's going to be probably the male, because the perpetrator of abuse on the female is going to be the one that's going to be dishing out the violence on the child. And it's typically the man who's dishing out the violence. So it's going to be the man.
And Mary?
Well, we already know what it is. women have more contact with children than men, which means that women abuse children more than men do, just because of proximity, and they have more contact with children than men do. Even in a two-parent household, the children spend most of their time with their mother, under the tutelage of their mother, and different things of this nature. Most times, men are working, and they're not home or at the nest as much as the mother. We just know this statistically. You can look at it. You can look it up. Women abuse children more than men do.
Oh, y'all wait till y'all hear my question number 4.
Oh, okay. Can I respond to that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the stats on that, again, the devil is in the details. They say those are the stats, and okay, I'll say that's okay. But they also say that is accounting for the man being absent in that household. Now, if they were to do the numbers based on the man being present, it would be equal or even more. They would be even more violent to the child. So looking at that statistic again, without taking into account the context, is inaccurate.
Well, I mean,
because
look,
the man is still more what's the word? More I want to say, I can't find the words at the moment.
If you can't
More
find it, let
likely,
Amiri
yes.
respond. Let Amiri respond.
Well,
the man is wait a minute. The man is more likely, equally as likely, if not more likely, to be physically violent towards a child if we are talking about it and putting the presence of a man back into the equation.
Well, look, I'm not saying any of this again, this isn't about finger pointing for me. It's about the ecological pressure. The reason why I'm talking about this is because, look, the kids are a handful. They get on your nerves. You be wanting to beat their ass. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes they be cruising for a bruising. And so I'm just merely stating what the statistics are saying. And again, it just goes back to the ecology. But look, let's not act as if better teaching and parenting, conflict resolution, mothers having a place where they can decompress, drop the kids off at a family, or just have a spa day for mom. Those things go a long way in mitigating the stressors that cause mothers to abuse children. So again, I'm not saying this to besmirch or women, or to somehow paint women as equal boogeymen to men. What I'm saying is that when we have these conversations, we have to be realistic, and we have to factor in the environmental stresses and factors that cause humans to act out in this way. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying, but the statistics speak for themselves.
And like I said, the devil is in the details. Those statistics don't speak for themselves if you're not taking it out, if you're not considering the context. They don't speak for themselves. In fact, if they're speaking, they're telling lies. So this is why
Well, go ahead and give us a few details.
So this is why I challenge what he says about, and it's not about, like he says he's not about pointing fingers, but then he's pointing fingers by saying that women are more abusive to their children, when that is not not accurate, even with the stats. So that's my point on that.
And Mary, I need you to come back. We're almost done.
Where did it go? Are we going to talk about the causes, or have we covered that? Because I wanted to talk about the many causes. Yes, I was kind of holding back on that because I don't want to give. I didn't want to give all my gems straight away.
That's why you have a closing statement.
Okay, all right. My closing statement's going to be long if because I didn't know where it was going, so I'm like, I don't want to give away all my gems straight away.
Okay.
Reveal them.
Mary,
okay, go ahead.
Said that your statistics doesn't reflect what you're saying.
Who said that?
Your debater.
Well, What I actually said was the statistic. You're saying you're not pointing fingers, but you are pointing fingers by
No, I'm
saying that
not.
women are more abusive to their children, when if we take that statistic and put it in context, men are still more abusive to their children.
It's look. It's if we want to talk
So
about what we're really quick. If we want to talk about mitigating domestic violence as a pattern over the course of a person's life, then we have to talk about the ecology. Where did this person first learn the behavior? And if you look at the statistics, children are being socialized to believe that violence is an appropriate response to dissatisfaction from their mothers. This isn't me making it up. We looked at the guy Darnell. He looked it up, and who the heck, man? Somebody.
Yeah, you're Borgie.
okay, so for that I would
Okay,
okay,
I'm
so
back.
for that, because we're talking about the presence of the mother and all of that, for that I can say, okay, maybe there's some element of truth to that. But to say that women are more abusive to the
I,
children is inaccurate. But to
I mean,
say that they are learning
the numbers are
these,
saying that.
yeah, but you're not taking into account the context. I literally just told you.
Okay.
In the context, it still says and it still shows that men are equally, if not more abusive to their children, if you put that into context. So we can't dismiss that when you're making a statement like women are more abusive. You can't dismiss that. That's actually vital information.
Okay. You have anything for Angelina Amiri
the,
before we
the,
move on?
the statistics say what the statistics say. Women are abusing children more than men. It just is what it is. Like, I didn't make that up. I'm not the one who came up with the statistics. We can have a conversation on why and greater context, but I'm just merely stating a fact. That's what the statistics say. On top of the statistics also showing that females are not less aggressive than men in the real world. I just read that out of the Frontiers Neuroscience Journal. I mean article. So we can agree to disagree and move on.
All right. Question number 4. Okay, this is some statistics. In 2021, the
Mhm.
data states that 9.5% of children living with two parents live below the poverty level, compared to 31.7% of children living with a single parent. And children living with only their mothers were more than twice as likely to live in poverty than those living with only their fathers. Is poverty a driven factor to why more women abuse children than men?
Yes, yes, and
What
this
it
is
ha-
why. Well, I go first, and then you can respond,
yeah, go
sis.
ahead.
But
Yeah, go
but
ahead.
this is why feminists have been correctly advocating for more parity economically for women, because poverty is look, being poor is at the bottom of the list of the things that people want to be, right above being dead. You know what I mean? So when you're in an impoverished household, that's going to create a whole host of sociological problems, including behavior and including instances of violence and abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. And what we know through the work of many feminists is what they call the feminization of poverty, how poverty is a feminine issue, because just as a universal feature of patriarchy, men hoard resources, which, going back to what I was saying before, how this has everything to do with social stratification and class. And so when that's the case, and you have a woman who's a single mother, and she's impoverished, it's going to be a ton of pressure on that mother to make ends meet, to mother effectively, and to maintain her own sanity. So this has a lot to do with poverty. It really does.
Okay, go ahead, Angelina. Can you answer that question?
I don't know how I can answer that question any differently than how I answered it before. Poverty is a factor. I'm not going to lie, it's a factor, but it's not the whole package. Can you repeat the question in regards to, can you repeat the question?
So kids,
So I lose it.
so it's 31% of children living with single parents, and more likely with their mothers are twice as likely to live in poverty than those living with their fathers. So we're trying to understand, is poverty a driven factor in why more women abuse their children than men?
Well, the fact that they're single parents and they have the stresses and the poverty, absolutely. That's a factor. It's no doubt.
Okay. Question number 5. And this will be the last question. And then you guys can have your closing statements. And then,
but for different, I want to add there, but for different reasons. For women.
Let's get those reasons then. This is why we haven't.
Okay. All right. Okay. So when it comes to the poverty for a man, they have an extra layer on top of that because of patriarchy that tells them that they have to be the provider. They should be the provider. And there's shame in that. Right. So there's an extra layer there when men are in poverty. Like females don't have that layer. They have the stresses and the additional stresses connected to not having money, right? They have the child and then they don't have the money for the daycare, which has an additional stress, which makes it harder for them to go to work and additional stress. Those two are equal with both, right? Men and women. But then also there's that added layer of patriarchy that says that men should be achieving, providing, and doing all of that, which again, anyway, that's my point.
Anything for you, Amiri?
It's different.
Well, it's like I was saying. I'm just gonna go back to the same thing because you're just gonna start with what you started with. It's about the ecology, the ecological pressure that's placed on women. I will make this observation that women are given more sympathy than men generally in society. We have more means of support for women, and we don't really have those things in place for men. And so, even if you look at the online gender war and a lot of the rhetoric that gets tossed to and fro in these spaces, we really have conversations where we belittle men and make light of men and their ability to function under the crushing weight of societal expectation because they're men. And then when these men strike out violently and engage in behaviors that's harmful to self and to women and to children and to other men, and then as a society we look befuddled, because this is an observation that I've made. Society is greatly implicated in the creation of the monsters that roam that society. And so we don't want to take responsibility for that. We don't want to take accountability for that. You see, and so if we want to talk about alleviating a lot of these problems, it can't be an accusatory thing. It can't be a thing where one gender wants to have a one up on the other. We have to have these conversations in an objective and balanced way so we can begin to alleviate a lot of these social ills and social issues. Because look, contemporary men, to be honest with you, the rug is being pulled out from under them. This is something I said on my show, that on a certain level, we do have to acknowledge that a lot of contemporary modern men they're having the rug pulled out from under their feet through no fault of their own. And so this is, look, if a woman doesn't achieve on a necessarily high level, right, she's not going to be shamed for that in the same way that a man is. Even though we're in this society, in this social ecosystem that we exist in, the socioeconomic hierarchy, it's a finite set hierarchy. We know that the game is rigged, so everybody can't make it. And so a lot of times, again, when you see men operating and acting in certain ways and things of that nature, you have to realize that these are the men who were left out. There's no place for these men in society. It's the reason why the prisons are packed with men. You think the prisons are packed with men because men are just inherently defective, or are the prisons packed with men because the prisons are where you store surplus labor force. You see, so we have to look at this stuff from an objective perspective. This is about social hierarchy, social dominance, and how a small group of men oppress everybody through class.
Can I respond to that?
Go ahead.
Before we get right. Okay, so my issue with what you're saying is not the issue with what you're saying as in, you know, society being part of it and poverty and the way that people view men and the equality where that's concerned, because male identity crisis is another reason why men abuse, right? When they're in that type of situation where they're being looked down upon and are not fitting the stereotype of what they should in society, there's an identity crisis which leads to violence in the home. Okay, I get that. The point that I have, my issue with what you're saying is that you're shifting the responsibility from the man himself onto society, whilst 47,000 women and girls are killed which is basically one killing every 11 minutes, predominantly by men. So we can't not talk about it being just about society. We need to go right to the core, because it's the men that are swinging the punches. Okay, so in that, we need to go to the root of this, the core of the situation. Yes, there are all these factors that influence it, but the men are swinging the punches. The men are putting the women in the dirt. Okay, so that's my issue. It's not that what you're saying is incorrect with when it comes to society. My issue is that you're shifting all of the responsibility onto society. And come on,
well, let me ask you
society
a question.
isn't killing these women.
Well, let me ask you a question. We've already established that women are the predominant, are the ones who predominantly abuse children. Yet you don't want to just take that at face value. You want to make it about, well, if the man was there, it would be the same, and you want to add all these types of qualifiers and contextualize the violence that mothers display against children. But then you don't want to use that same that same framework when it comes to just men generally in the society, and a lot of this antisocial behavior that a minority of men are displaying. It's a lot of this stuff that's happening in society. It's not coming from a majority of the men. It's coming from a minority of the men. And all I'm saying is that the reason why when you look at it from the socioeconomic perspective, the reason why it's more predominantly on the lower end of the socioeconomic hierarchy is because it's the pressure that arises from, like you said, the male identity crisis. That's true. And poverty and the expectation of what it means to be a male. You know what I mean? I'm not shifting the responsibility. I'm talking about the entire ecology, the entire life cycle, the entire chain of custody that creates this cycle of violence, because it is a cycle. It is a cycle. These men aren't individual actors. They're existing in a system known of as patriarchy. And so we have to deconstruct every cell of patriarchy to get to the objective truth, so then we can more accurately formulate ways to mitigate this behavior. I just read it out the Frontiers Journal. We know that in the real world, this myth that women are less aggressive than, like, this is one of the reasons why a lot of men on these social spaces and have these conversations, they think women are being masculine when a woman is being aggressive, or when a woman is being assertive, or when a woman is standing her ground. That's not a male characteristic. You don't have a monopoly on that. It's the myth of patriarchy that tells you as a man you have a monopoly on that. Because a woman has a right to stand her ground. Sometimes you need to be assertive. Sometimes you need to be aggressive. You see, so I mean, for me, it's not a point the finger thing. It's how do we make a more safe, whole, equal, egalitarian society.
Okay, we got an echo.
So can I respond to what you're saying there? Because another factor that comes out of that is not just about the male. Okay, it's a male identity crisis, right? But another thing that causes a male identity crisis is the inability to control women. That is the other thing. So again,
so let me.
I understand what you're saying.
Right.
I am taking into consideration the whole system, the whole patriarchy. I'm taking that into consideration because that is another reason why, you know, we have the gendered approach when it comes to violence, right? Because of this system. All right. So, you know, I'm taking that into consideration, but at the same time, I still think you're shifting the buck, because at the same time, it's like, okay, you're moving it to, oh, we need to do something with society. That's the thing that's the thing we're not going to solve. You know what I mean? Women are going to keep dying.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question.
If we're waiting for that one, right?
Let me ask you a question.
So we need to
Hold on, you guys. We're gonna, you guys can counter, and then we're gonna go to question 5. Then we're gonna go to you guys' closing statements. Okay. So
okay.
Make it 2 minutes, and then go to question 5, and then we're gonna go to your closing statements, and then chat. Get ready for your questions for the panelists.
Okay. When a woman, right, when she does something horrendous and unalives her children, what's the term they use for that?
It's murder.
No, that's not. No, it's called what? Postpartum what?
You're talking about the mental illness that causes them to unalive their children.
Right. So see how you're saying it's a mental illness?
Well, because you called it postpartum depression. That is a mental illness. I'm not being biased. You called it
listen
that.
What I'm saying.
So
listen at what I'm saying. No, but listen at what I'm saying though. Listen at what I'm saying.
I don't understand
if a man
what
is
you're
mentally
saying. Okay, go ahead.
Listen at what I'm.
Listen, we have
30
people that are watching us. This is very informative. You guys are here to give other people information. Okay, just keep that in mind.
Go ahead.
Right. So when a mother does something like that, which is very frequent, it's not as infrequent as feminists and others would have everybody to believe. There's an entire apparatus in place to characterize that behavior as a mental illness. However, when it comes to men, you're going to say, "Well, this is because how men are. Men just this and men just that."
That's not what I said, though.
Just as likely. I'm not saying you per se, sis.
Go ahead.
I'm not saying you per se. What I'm saying is society, the way patriarchy will frame it. Well, this is because this man, this, that, and the third, or the other. A lot of this stuff is mental illness. And so this is what I'm saying. If you're going to have the foresight to correctly diagnose the mental illnesses that arise from mothers who do horrendous things to their children, then you have to be uniform in that. You can't just have that reserved for women. You have to have. Yeah, no, I think that's. So she got a mute.
Who, me?
And it should go away. No, what's her name?
Angelina. I'm muted.
Angelina. Okay, right. So, okay, and what I'm saying is, yeah, and what I'm saying is, you have to have that same framework in place for men because it is mental illness.
Okay, and like I said at the very beginning of this situation, I need the stats for how it's not rare for women. It's less rare than you think. Give me some numbers to account for that. And secondly, we can't even the playing field where that's concerned, because that would neutralize the gender approach that is protecting the rest of the women from being killed. Okay, the mental health illnesses that are a contributing factor to abuse are mainly male dominated. So this is another reason why it is biased. It's biased on purpose.
Okay, so we're going to go to question 5. Now, with all the problems caused from domestic violence and child abuse, could it just be a result of human behavior and social conditioning? If not, what would you say would be what would you say or consider would be the cause and effects on society with these two problems? Go ahead, Angelina.
In child abuse or abuse in general?
Okay, with the problems caused by both,
Okay.
could we say it's just human behavior and social conditioning? If not, what would you say and what would you consider would be the cause and effects it has on the society?
All right. So there's an element of human behavior because anyone can be an aggressive at any time, right? So we can't cancel out that element. But then there's also the mental health thing, the poverty thing, the male identity thing, the social norms thing, patriarchy thing. There's all of those factors that play a part in it too. And this, the abuse of children it causes a thing called complex CPTSD, right? Which basically makes you more vulnerable to more trauma as you grow up. So a lot of the women who are in abusive relationships right now have been abused in childhood. So, and this has an impact on healthcare services, rehab services, because a lot of people who have been abused are, they suffer from addiction issues. Like, I think it's 30 to 59% of women in these substance abuse places have been abused. So there's an impact on healthcare services. There's an impact on basically on everything. Housing.
So
it's a major impact on society.
We live in a terrible world then. Okay.
Basically.
Amiri, would you like to answer that question?
What was the question again?
Okay, with the problems caused from domestic violence and child abuse, could you just say it be a result of human behavior and social conditioning? If not, what would you say would be considered the cause and the effects it has on society?
Well, I've been talking about the cause this entire evening. The cause, like again, behavior isn't self-manifesting. Behavior is a response to external stimuli in one's environment, and so that goes a long way in helping us to understand why humans act the way they act. Now, this isn't to say that do you have biological differences between men and women in the way we process things and the way we behave to a certain extent. Of course, but overall, this has more to do with socialization, how we are socialized, the things that we are taught to believe. Again, when I talked about child abuse, it's because I wanted to lay out very succinctly the cycle of violence that many of these perpetrators grow up in. If you look at a lot of people who are perpetrators of abuse, what you find out is that somewhere in their life they were a victim of abuse. This is why we say hurt people hurt people. And so if we want to begin to correct the behavior and mitigate these problems, you have to look at the overall context that these people are growing up in, learning this behavior. Violence is a learned behavior. It's learned. You can't make both of the arguments. You can't say this is what they do because they got that male brain. And no, violence is learned. And so a lot of times, people who are perpetrators of violence have at one point in their life been victims of violence. And so again, this is why the society itself is implicated in this, because this is the life cycle. This is the chain of custody of abuse, where a person is abused. Now they go out, learn that behavior, internalize that behavior, and act out that behavior. We have to be honest.
I think that's a wild generalization. Yes, some people can abuse as a result of being abused, but then some don't. So that's not the.
Which one is you think? Which scenario do you think is more likely?
Interesting question. I think
Be
it's
honest.
more likely. Well, considering how abuse affects you, I think it was more likely that you would go up to be abused as opposed to being an abuser. If I'm looking at it from a completely honest point of view, with the complex CPTSD and all of that stuff, it would lead to, unless you went past complex PTSD into a personality disorder, which is the not the psychopath, because it's not, but into the narcissism, into all of those things. Unless you went into that past CPTSD, you would probably park at just being a victim.
Okay.
That's my honest answer.
So, Amiri, I know you guys been talking and going back and forth. Let's give the audience your closing statements on all of the questions that you answered, and we're gonna go into the chat for their questions.
Okay. Well, I want to read something. It's not long, and this is out of a book. I just got this book, and this book is normally $500 on Amazon. I was able to get it for still at $100, but it's written by Stephen Goldberg. It says the inevitability of patriarchy, why the biological difference between men and women always produces male domination. And he has a section. He has a section in this book, page 113, called "Depression." I want to read this really quick. It says all of this indicates that the theoretical model that males have entertaining positions of status, authority, and leadership.
Well, you got to start over, Amiri.
Hell.
You're Morgan.
Okay. All right. I'm Morgan. Am I still Morgan?
Yeah.
Is that better? I'm still. I don't know.
Yeah, this your closing statement. You got to hit, man. Come on, man.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I'm gonna give it. Let Angelina and.
Yeah, while you get that together, Angelina, give the audience your closing statement on all of the questions you answered, and you guys dialogue together. Closing statement.
Okay, so what is my closing statement? Okay, it's really the same as my openings. There's been no growth. It's really the same as my opening statement. It's basically, okay, we understand that men are predominantly the abusers. We get that, right? And okay, there are factors that make that the case, apart from them just being designed as abusive people. I get that. But the fact is, they are still the predominantly abusive people. And the fact is, women are still dying at the hands of this. Women and girls. And I don't think it is acceptable for us to just point the finger at society when we're talking about this issue. Yes, society plays a part, but we really need to look. Okay, how can I say this? We really need to look at those factors like male identity crisis. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the red pill posse, right? Right there. Right, so we really need to look at those things and address. We know what a factor is. We know that male identity is a thing. So when we see that in these posses, that needs to be addressed. Not society as a whole. And, you know, I think that's way too much of an elephant to try and eat. And in that way, we can narrow it down and actually do something that's going to change something. Because patriarchy is this big, just sheet that covers everything that we can't really reach or touch or change. And that's my issue with planting everything on patriarchy and saying it's not the man, it's patriarchy, it's this, it's that, it's third. Yes, it's this, that, and the third, but men are still doing it.
Okay, Amiri, you back? Are you done? No, not yet. You still in your closing statement, Angelina?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll stop there.
Okay. Okay, Amiri, closing statement. You seem like you had something really juicy to say.
Well, I'll just say this. Again, this is about how we make a more safe society for men everywhere. And also, too, I just want to point out that the victims of homicide are predominantly men. The victims who are the people who are the most disenfranchised in terms of housing, who are the most homeless, are men. The people who are packed out in prisons in disproportionate sentences to serve prison time, solitary confinement, are men. There's a whole host of metrics you could look at to see where men are victimized by the system of patriarchy, and people will just ignore it because we just take at face value that if something bad befalls a man, then it just is what it is. You see, and it can't work like that in a free and open society where egalitarian and equality is the order of the day. And I think that women need to get used to the idea of being examined under the same microscope that they have been examining men under, because that's going to be one of the undue consequences of these more egalitarian policies. And I think that what's going to be found is that women and men are more alike than they're unalike. That's what you're going to find. You're going to find that men and women are actually more similar than they are dissimilar. So I'll just end it with that.
Okay, chat. Are you guys ready for your questions?
Can I respond to that? Because he's literally just changed.
Oh, that's a closing statement, Angelina.
Okay, all right.
Okay, we got some. Come on, chat, before we close this off. If I don't get no questions for the panelists, then we're going to end the show. And you see that Cash App. Bless your girl, bless your girl. Come on, chat. Y'all had a lot to say during the debate, so questions from the chat, welcome. Yeah, that's Torch. I seen somebody said something about, I think that Andre Brown. You still here? It was a while ago. I forgot what he said. I think the chat is scared. Oh, come on, chat. I don't think they want to participate today. I think it's hitting home. What was very important to me is I understand that I kind of agree with Amiri with the being under the same microscope as men. I think women, from my research and then all of the court cases and stuff I've seen with women that are, doing harm to children, it's very interesting. But I agree that women should be, I wouldn't say placed under the same, what's the word for it? The same, somebody help me.
Expectations.
Yeah, expectations. But I do believe that women now should be looked at more closely than ever before. Because
that's exactly what's going to happen.
I'm confused at how. Okay, I'm not saying that we shouldn't look at women. Of course, we should look at women. Fine, but I'm confused at how you just went into. First of all, your points that you made about men and how they're suffering in this society is not relevant to the discussion that we're having about DV, domestic violence. How they're victims. I mean, okay, it is. It's kind of relevant in some ways because we're talking about society and the pressure and how that leads to abuse. So, okay, fair enough. But then you're saying, so on one hand, you're saying, oh my gosh, this society is terrible, patriarchy is destroying them, and that's why they're killing people. And on the other hand, you're saying women should be placed under the same pressure that men are in patriarchy,
not
because
the
that's
same
going to
pressure.
solve what? No, but that's what he said. They should be put under
microscope.
under the same microscope. Okay, microscope pressure. Microscope pressure. Okay,
Right.
so they're looked at. So they're being looked at in the same way that men are looked at. That's basically what he said. So
yeah, I mean, I'm talking about in
but
terms
he
of
just
examination.
basically spent. Yeah, but
I'm talking
that
about in terms
examination.
of examination.
Yeah, but that examination.
Okay,
what do you mean?
we got a question for Angelina. Bam.
Okay.
Because you guys had your chance to go back and forth. So Darnell says, Miss Angelina, does the UK have the same issues with dating between men and women as we have here in the US? And do UK women feel the same as American women? Okay, Darnell. We wasn't talking about dating, Darnell. If you want to answer it, go ahead.
That's a difficult one to answer, because how are women feeling in America about dating? So when you were talking about under the microscope, do you mean in regards to, be specific, what do you mean in regards to? Because maybe I misunderstood what you were saying.
I mean, in terms of being sexual crimes, violent crimes, aggression, things that we would just take at face value as being just inherent male faculties. They're going to start examining women under those same traits and characteristics, and my suspicion is what they're going to find is that men and women are more alike than they're not alike. They're more similar than dissimilar.
Okay, we got
the best way to look at that is
panelists.
Okay.
No back and forth. We got a question. Eat your yoga. Why aren't men taking advantage of social programs? I think that's for you, Amiri.
I think it has to do with the stigma. See, men, if a man doesn't achieve, or if he's seen as being weak in any way, there's not a lot of sympathy that's going to be afforded to him. We have to acknowledge that. Look, Grant Cardone about 2 months ago came out and said at one of his events, and this went viral. This clip went viral, and he said that if you're not a man making $400,000 a year, then there's something wrong with you. Now think about that. Think about how asinine it is for him to make that type of assertion. But the reason why he's able to make that type of assertion and not face any backlash is because of the stigma. It's because of the stigma.
Mary,
because the way men are stigmatized.
Mary, they hitting you with these questions. Hey, chat, if you have anything to ask Angelina on all that you heard her say, please put it in the chat. Okay, Alexander Brennan says, Amiri Brown, what can
I answer that question as well, please?
Just
talking about the last one. Yeah.
What was the question?
The question was
social programs. Why aren't men taking advantage?
Why aren't taking about? We have to. Okay, whilst there's stigma and all of that, we have to take into account that some men just don't want the help.
That's true too.
I don't think it's all about just men being victims and they just don't want the stigma. Some men literally don't want the help. They're happy abusing women.
Okay.
They're not going to change that.
Amiri Brown, what can we do?
That's not what the question was about, though. The question wasn't about abusing women. The question was simply asking, why aren't men taking advantage of social programs? So if you have a man who's homeless, maybe he's not going to go take advantage of a program that would help him find housing. That does not have anything to do with men who abuse women. See what I'm saying?
I understand why she asked the question, because you said something about men.
Men being homeless and stuff like that.
Exactly. So, Amiri, what can we do? This is Alexander. What can we do to stop violence happening to women?
Well, more police, more policing, more law enforcement. Also, too, we have to look at mitigating child abuse, and we have to look at socializing men to understand that it's not okay to put your hands on a woman under any circumstances. And then on top of that, you have to contend with this red pill philosophy, which is why I do what I do, because what you see that philosophy doing is imbibing in men this idea, this notion that it's just their birthright to control and dominate and subjugate women. And so what that's going to have the opposite effect. That's just going to lead to more violence from men towards women, more aggression from men towards women, more sexual assault from men towards women, and that's not good for anybody. So it has to be a multifaceted approach to make the society more safe for women. You know, we have to have programs and law enforcement and socialization in place to make the society safer for women. Even with everything that's been done, women are still unsafe in this society.
Okay, do any one of you guys have a question for Angelina? Okay.
Can I answer that question?
We got it. I want to get somebody to get.
Okay.
All of these are for Amiri. Okay. Okay, you guys can answer this. He didn't address anyone. Do you feel that social media played a role in elevating the division between men and women in our community? Go ahead and tackle that, Angelina.
I really wanted to tackle the last one because I wanted to put some perspective. It's okay, whatever. I'll answer this. You feel that social media played a role in it? Can you bring the question back, please?
Okay, hold on. Oh, I just passed it. My bad. Hold on.
That's okay.
I mean, it's kind of off topic, but I guess.
Yeah, I'll let someone else answer that. I'm not.
Do you guys have any questions for Angelina pertaining to all that she said tonight? Please.
Okay, wait a minute. I think
okay,
Angelina so wanted to answer this one, right? Is this
I wanted to answer this one because Amiri said about, more things put in place in regards to letting men know that that's not the way forward. But we've been doing that. Like, that sounds like a good idea, but it's not working. 95% of men that go into these programs that are supposed to help them to understand that they're not supposed to do this come out exactly the same.
Oh, we got one for Angelina.
So that's not necessarily helpful at this point. And they say that they come out exactly the same because of the mental health issues attached to their behavior. So I'm thinking that a better course of action. So I'm thinking a better course of action would be to address the mental health issues.
Okay, Angelina, you see your question? Because I think it's related to what you're saying now.
What can Black women do to protect themselves from red pill black men? Educate themselves about toxic and abusive dynamics and stay away from these types. Completely. Don't even entertain it. It's a serious thing. It's not, oh, red pill, hee. These people are abusive people. So just stay away from them completely. Don't get into a relationship with them. Don't think that you can change them in some way. Don't think your love is going to save the day. It's not. Don't think of them as lost because they're not. A lot of them have mental health issues, again, right? So there's nothing short of medication and a therapist that's going to help that situation. So protecting yourself would be to stay away from them.
You got another one, Angelina.
I didn't get it. Why do these men behave in the way they do in society? Is it the way they were brought up? Or is it the environment? I think it can be a oh God, that's a complicated question. It could be a bit of both. I mean, if they were brought up in a situation where they witness violence, men particularly can take on the role of the perpetrator of that violence because they witnessed that being the power position. You know what I mean? So in that, that can happen. With men more than women, I think, because again, there's that dominant aspect, that element of that element of domination that is required and expected from men in patriarchy. So with men, when they're witnessing that kind of violence, okay, that could be a part of it.
I have a question for Angelina.
Go ahead.
Why do you think? What would you say is the profession where we see the men who portray the most violence against women? What's normally that profession?
What is the profession?
Yeah, what would you say is it? Like if we had to look at it from an occupational standpoint, what would you say is the occupation that has?
That's way too much of a broad question to ask, really. I mean, they come in all shapes and sizes. The profession?
You don't think it's police officers?
I mean, a lot of abusers gravitate to authoritarian roles, for sure. Military being another one.
Right.
There are a hell of a lot of abusers in the military.
I think a lot of it has to. Yeah, but that's because of the stress of what this stuff does to the human.
Yeah, but we're not talking about reasons. You can't.
But you have to talk about reasons.
No.
This is the thing.
The reason why I'm saying we're not talking. Okay, let me finish. Can I finish what I'm saying? Can I finish what I'm saying? Please, can I finish what I'm saying? Like, when I say we're not talking about reasons, I'm saying you didn't ask you were asking me about a specific demographic of the specific profession of a person. That's not a reason. So when I said military too, you've now shifted it to reasons. What are you doing? You're mixing it up. It's like, are we talking about professions or are we talking about reasons? Because you said
no, I'm not.
Would it be police officers for some reason? And I'm like, okay, the military too. And then you're like, oh well,
it's the same. It's all the same. What feminists want to do? You cannot want to deconstruct patriarchy, but then want to hold on to the myths that only paint women as victims and men as perpetrators. That's not going to work, and this is exactly why what they're beginning to do through the social science. Let me finish. Let me finish.
That's going to be the next debate. That's going to be the next one. Because
can I please finish my point?
Yes. We're here to educate our listeners, and I think that's very important.
Right. This is why they're beginning. This is why they're beginning to look at women in the same way they examine men. This is why they're beginning to do that, because if you're going to deconstruct patriarchy, you have to deconstruct all of it, and so that's like it's inevitable. And again, what you're going to find is that men and women are more similar than dissimilar. They react and they respond and they behave relatively the same way under the same environmental stresses. The reason why I brought up occupation is because we can look at it. We know what occupations have the greater instances of domestic violence, intimate partner violence. It's no coincidence that it's military and police. Military and police are some of the most stressed occupations that's out there. And so again, you have to look at the ecology, the ecological pressure that people are under that's causing the behavior. If you really want to fix this stuff, if you can't get the prognosis correct and the treatment correct, if you're not diagnosing it correctly.
Okay, can I just address that when we're talking?
Respond to it, and then we're gonna.
Okay, right.
You guys you guys gonna have to come back.
So when we're talking about, I think under the same microscope, they're going to think the same way, and men and women. It's not a myth that men are more violent. We all know it. I don't understand why we're talking about it like it's a myth. That's the reality. That's the stats. So I'm just going to move away from that. Next thing. When we're talking about same sex, when we get into the same sex arena, men are more abusive. And they say that women are not far behind, but then they also say that in regards to them being abusive, like in regards to lesbians experiencing physical abuse, stalking, rape, and all of that stuff, apparently women are not far behind. But then in that, they also say even men are included in the stats for women, in these lesbians. 1/3, at least 1/3 are still perpetrated by men. So this is not in any way a myth. And the deconstruction of patriarchy, I'm an advocate for the deconstruction of patriarchy. But to do that while saying that the violence against women, that being disproportionate as a result of male perpetrators, cannot be questioned, because you're putting lives at risk. And that's where I get like, okay, nah, that can't be questioned. That's not a myth. And if you're saying that you are for the protection of women, you cannot be saying it's a myth when it's in your face.
Okay,
I'm for the protection of both men and for the protection of both men and
but
women.
men don't need protecting like women need protecting.
Hold on.
In a free and open society, you maintain public safety for the citizens.
Hold on. You guys are definitely coming back, because there's some points that you guys said that needs to be talked about. Thank you guys for liking the stream. Super chats, hit that Cash App too. But it's all good. It's all love. It's all love. And we're trying to cut down our time for our stream. We had 1 hour and 50 minutes. And we're going to wrap this up, you guys. Appreciate you guys for coming. You guys will be back, because you guys are going to tackle the deconstruction of patriarchy. You're going to tackle that. You're going to tackle all the things that you guys said extra. DJ Torch, you have anything?
Yeah, I really appreciate both Amiri and Angelina for coming up. This was an excellent, beautifully done by, beautifully moderated by Cyber Dreams. Wonderful. I hope y'all would like to do this again. This is the type of intellectual conversation we need to have more of. I would like to thank Yolandos for her super sticker, and ain't hard out here for a pimp super sticker, and everybody in the chat for your participation. I'm looking forward to doing more of these conversations, and this has got to be the most mature footage on YouTube today. Anyway, today. That's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you guys for your participation. Torch, let's get that good
Thank y'all for having me up. Thank you to Angelina for being on here. Y'all have a good night. I appreciate it. This was good.
Yep, thank you. What is this
Amiri.
question?
Looks like, okay.
Hey, Darnell, he should have asked that the first time.
Let's go ahead and answer it.
Okay,
So-
Angelina, answer it.
Well, according to my stats, they're still less than men in same sex. According to my stats, they're still less than men. And in that, men are still involved. So I don't know what stats you're looking at. They do vary. That's my answer.